It's going into my Facebook. All right, so it should be on my Facebook page. So I'm trying to figure out where I can see it on Facebook. Oh, there. Don't see it on my Facebook page yet. Good evening, everyone. I am here this evening. This is Tuesday Talk Live, and this is Vera Sadler with VLS Coaching Services. And I am here tonight with my esteemed guests. I am so proud tonight to have with me tonight Susan Herrera and Thomas Postel. Susan Herrera, who is a behavioral health social worker, Thomas Postel, who is the Home Zone Cedar Hill manager. Susan, who was born and raised in Dallas. She's currently a works at Baylor Scott and White. She's a licensed master social worker in the state of Texas, hailing from Baylor and UTA. She says she currently provides integrated behavioral health services in primary care clinic that focuses on diabetic care management. She's passionate about providing access to care for marginalized communities. I love that, Susan. And she says in her free time, she enjoys spending time with her boyfriend, and we know who he is, family and friends who provide support and love for her success and well-being. Thomas Postel, who's 24 years old. Susan, by the way, how old are you?
I'm 27.
Okay. And Thomas, who is 24 years old, who's born in New York and raised in Colorado and Texas. He's currently the general manager for the Home Zone Furniture Store located in Cedar Hill. His interests are fitness, sports, cars, and Japanese culture. And Thomas has a Japan trip coming up, which maybe he can tell us a little bit about when he comes back from Japan. So he finally gets to explore that Japanese culture. So, Susan, if you go first, ladies first, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit more about yourself.
What would you like to know?
Just something for the people to just, who is Susan Herrera outside of what I just read? Is there anything more that you could share with the people?
I'm also a big Cowboys fan, so getting ready to gear up for football season. A big college sports fan. Definitely a Baylor Bear fan. I also enjoy fitness. That's been a big part of my life over the last couple of years too. I've met a lot of great people through that community, a lot of support as well, and really just trying to get pieces together for the future to make sure that we continue to build upon the foundation that I've been building for the last couple of years.
All right. That's awesome. Thomas, if you would like to share with us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, not much more than what you said in the bio. General manager for Home Zone Cedar Hill. Most of my time outside of work is spent either working on my car, at the gym, or just hanging out around my house. Love hanging out with the dog, obviously. Play with the dog. And I live a pretty basic life. Just work out, work on my car, hang out with friends. Don't really have much more to it than that. I'm pretty boring, not gonna lie.
Especially with
Well,
how hot it's been, I like to stay inside.
I
Yeah,
think that's all of us
especially with
right
that.
now. We all like to be inside. So I wanted to just really take time to have this conversation. If you guys give me a second, so I am trying to get to view the Facebook. So I'm gonna stop talking for a moment so I can get over to Facebook and mute it because I want to be able to see the comments. And I'm hoping that there are some people viewing us live. And you guys know I already told you, gave you a disclaimer that I'm learning how to use the StreamYard platform, even though I love it. So I'm going to get over there to Facebook and pull it over here so I can see that as well. But I need to mute that conversation. There we go. So I can see now the comments, and hopefully there's some others watching us on Facebook. So as we have this conversation going on over here, I wanted to just take this time because I know lots of times those of us of my generation, I have been not, hopefully, I haven't been one that's guilty that has dismissed your age group. And I specifically, that's why, Susan, I wanted you to come on and say how old you are. And I specifically chose Mr. Postel as well because of his age group. But I wanted to take and reach back to, first of all, both of you, I admire you. You're both professionals. You both are doing well in your careers. And I wanted to take look at two young professionals that I admire because I've seen both of you. I know your work ethic and I know what you do, and I've seen you advance in your careers. And just tell me, so Thomas, I have seen that you had. Tell me how you started out in your career, and then because I want people to see your journey and how you went from starting as a laborer and up to a manager. And then Susan, you could tell us a little bit maybe how you got there to also in your career. But sometimes those of us in my when being manager, I know how I became a manager. Who helped you get there? Because my age group should have been the individuals who helped you. This has been a sensitive topic for me. That those I'm 58, and we should have been the population that were giving back to you. But I know we haven't always been good mentors. We haven't been always been good coaches, and we haven't always been good examples. So I wanted to have a conversation to speak a little bit to that. We have, you're in your career. You guys are in relationships. I'm not sure if you're in permanent, maybe not, but we're supposed to be the ones that are leading the way. And I don't know if we've always been great examples of that. So I wanted to stop by tonight and have a little bit of what I call Tuesday night talk and talk a little bit about it. So I don't know which one of you want to go first. Okay. Susan, you go first.
Okay. So do you want me to start with like how I've gotten to where I'm at from
Yes.
where I started? So right now in the position I'm at, I am a therapist in a primary care clinic. And so I've been there for almost a year, so I haven't been there that long. And kind of how I got there, I graduated from grad school in 2020 in like the midst of like COVID and everything. I really wanted to get into like the healthcare world, especially like a hospital system. But it's really hard to get into the hospital system right out of school. And so I was really just applying to jobs across, the hospital systems up here in North Texas and just trying to see what hit. And I started off in research as a research associate working with caregivers of adults with Alzheimer's and other dementia related disorders. And then from there, I kind of got like my foot into like the professional world a little bit, started networking with some people across different departments, reconnecting with people from, grad school and other places too. And I was able to transfer internally into the psychiatry field. And there I got a lot of great experience working with like inpatient service psychiatric services and how to connect them with outpatient psychiatric services. But a couple of months in, I kind of realized, this really wasn't what I felt like I needed to do at the moment. It was a brand new position, and I think with just starting off with my career, I wanted something that was already a little bit more established, that kind of had a system already put in place. And so, using my professional network, I was able to connect with where I'm at right now and, kind of transition into that clinical therapeutic side of what I aspire to do, because I do aspire to be a clinician. I'm currently under clinical supervision to hopefully be able to get my clinical license. So right now I'm a LMSW, licensed master social worker, and I aspire to be an LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker. Really, the difference between what I do right now and then an LCSW is I'll be able to practice independently in the future once I get that done. So I was really looking for like just a system and stabilization in my career within the past year. I switched jobs like 3 times. And so that was a little hard because it was kind of, you know, making me question myself, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I confident enough to continue to like in this field? And I think up until this point, very recently, I realized, you know what? I think I am. I've given myself a lot of grace over the last year or so, a lot of flexibility, a lot of time to just allow myself to be present where I'm currently at instead of trying to always kind of um, plan for the future. Although it's good to plan for the future, it's really good to stay in the present um, as well.
Did you have any mentor to help you?
Yes. So the person who got me connected to my current like manager, my current team, she was my supervisor during my grad school internship or like field placement. And then we became friends through that. And so she was already in the Baylor system. I was kind of telling her a little bit about, what had been going on professionally and just kind of what was next for me in terms of um, some decisions I had to make. And she was like, hey, I know this social work team here at Baylor. The manager is really great. Just send her your resume, connect with her, talk to her a little bit, so you have her in your network too. And so I did. And 2 weeks later, the social worker at the clinic where I'm currently at decided to move on somewhere else, and I got connected to the clinic in that way. And so this specific person, her name is Brittany, I've really aspired to kind of mimic my career around hers. She does a lot of what I want to do. She's giving me a lot of great advice, and she's kind of a little bit older than me, so she's experienced. She's a LCSW now, so she knows the process of from getting to grad school, LMSW, LCSW, what the job market looks like for individuals with our training and expertise and licensure. And so I'm really grateful to have her and to have her mentorship and friendship and really just her guidance, especially this last year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thomas, tell us a little bit about your journey.
So with the company that I'm currently with, HomeZone, uh, starting out with HomeZone, I wasn't career minded at all. I actually initially started with HomeZone just because I was looking for a job that would give me insurance. At the time, I was working two jobs, um, and when I started with HomeZone, it was kind of accidental. I actually went there looking to purchase a couch. I had never heard of the place before, and my mother mentioned it to me. So I went to a store, was checking it out, and at the time they had a sign there at the place saying that they were hiring. And so I put in for a sales position, and I didn't end up getting the position. I actually got overlooked for somebody else. And so about a month later, after I had gotten skipped over, the general manager of that particular location gave me a call back, said that his warehouse guy had just quit and he needed somebody to do warehouse work, which I wasn't too interested in doing. At one of the two jobs I was working prior, I was already doing that field of work, going in, unloading trucks, moving things, things of that sort. But I was looking for any sort of out of the situation that I was in. So I took the job. I started out with HomeZone as a warehouse guy, doing the same stuff, unloading trucks, moving furniture, building furniture. And then finally I got the opportunity to become a sales rep. And so I started off as a sales rep. At the time, I was at what was the lowest volume store in the company, so much so that we actually don't even have that location anymore. But I started out there. I was selling, but wasn't selling a lot. We didn't have a lot of people coming in, weren't closing a lot of big sales. And that honestly started to bother me a little bit. We happened to have one incident where a assistant manager from another location was covering over at our store. And he kind of sat me down and had a conversation with me about, not focusing so much on having these big sales, but just taking the best care of the guest as I can and making sure I close every sale that I can, taking advantage of every opportunity. And that first month after I had that conversation with him was the first month I actually hit my bonus for my sales numbers that month. And so that is definitely one mentor I had kind of in the early on stages of this career moving forward. After that, they, like I said, they shut down that store and I got moved to our Fort Worth location. And the store manager there, his name is Eric. I still talk to him on a pretty much weekly basis. He kind of changed my mindset around the company. Uh, Unfortunately, I didn't have the best mentality towards work at the time just because of the situation I came out of. Like I said, it was the lowest grossing store. It was a dilapidated building. It was falling apart. It wasn't the best. But when I got to the Fort Worth location, the store manager, Eric, there basically said, like, hey, today's your first day with Home Zone. Everything that happened prior to that, we're not even going to think about. Let's get you started on the right track. And I absolutely boomed from that point. From then on, I was able to make myself onto what we call our president's list, which is a list of the top 20 sales reps in the company. Um, did really well selling. And then I finally got an opportunity. At that location, we had our store manager and our assistant manager, and our assistant manager was going on maternity leave. And so our regional manager came down to the store. I had been in our program. It's called MIT, Manager in Training. It's something that everybody who works for Home Zone is eligible for, since they do not hire managers. They only promote from within. And so she was going on maternity leave, was going to be gone for a while. And while she was gone, I was going to be essentially covering her position. So it wasn't an official promotion, but during the time I was going to be doing the job of an assistant manager, was going to be getting paid what assistant managers paid. And it was basically like a little internship or stage to figure out how I would fit the position. So I did that for those 2-3 months, however long it was. And the week prior to her coming back, my regional manager reached out to me and told me that I'd done such a good job, they were just going to go ahead and promote me full time there at that location as a second assistant manager. And so that was when I kind of started to get more career oriented with Home Zone. A big part of it also being my surgery, not to go into too much detail, but I had the crazy operation. And after I had the operation, when I finally made it back to work, I didn't really have the stamina to be walking around all day and working with guests. And so I would write up some sales orders for some sales reps, but the managers were really working a lot on management training with me during that time. And so a combination of that and me just finally getting the opportunity, like I said, kind of just shifted my mindset from, oh, I'm just working a job to, okay, I can actually build a career, a good career out of this. So was the assistant manager at our Fort Worth location for a little over a year prior to getting moved to our Arlington location. I was not there for a long period of time. I actually thought I would be there much longer, but we had a situation at our Cedar Hill store. And then one day my regional manager just calls me up and is like, hey, I need a general manager for Cedar Hill. So what do you think? And I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of scary. Typically when there is an opening at a store like that, they'll like interview a couple of different assistant managers. They'll come to the store to talk to the staff about, how you work and whether or not they would follow you over to the store, just little qualifying questions, things of that sort. But there was none of this for that. It was just like, hey, this position's open. Do you want it? And so I took it, walked out on faith and just kind of jumped in there. It was very terrifying, but it's been lucrative. It has definitely worked out. In the time that I've been there as the general manager at the Cedar Hill store, I've gotten their highest sales day, their highest, we do a yearly regional walk kind of thing. It's called a spear, but basically all the regionals come to your store, count your inventory, talk to your sales reps, look at the showroom, things of that sort, and give you a grade based on it. My first year as the general manager at our Cedar Hill location, I got the highest spear score ever recorded at that store. Just little things like that. So I have been very fortunate. It has worked out very well, and now I'm just working to become a regional. Always have to have some sort of goal in mind.
Well, I will honestly say this is one of the reasons why I asked both of you to come on, because I feel like both of you have taken the bull by the horns and have taken responsibility for your career. And Thomas, I want to say I appreciate how you said, slide a little bit more over into your camera. You're not the other. Yeah, there you go. How you said that originally you weren't taking it serious. It was like, oh, and most of all, I will say a lot of us get into jobs because, hey, I need a job, I need benefits, I need to sustain myself. But when you had that shift and you had someone that had this really serious conversation with you and say, look, you're here. How about basically make the best of this? Don't look at it as I'm just coming to work, punching the clock, making widgets, as we call it. As old folks say, you come in here, you're making widgets. This is what you can really do with this if you shift your mindset. So I appreciate those individuals who had those conversations with you and shift it, because I anybody who's ever been to their store, there is a healthy respect even for those who are older than you and you're the manager, and they know your stuff. And that store is, I love going in there, it blossoms. And then Susan, I remember when you left the company that we both used to work at, and one of the reasons was because you wanted your career to take a certain shape and a form, and you wanted to make sure that you were growing yourself and that you were becoming the individual that you, as you put on this paper, that you can help and provide access and care to individuals in a certain manner. And you didn't want to be stuck in this unproductive and an environment that wasn't conducive to your own career growth. And if we're not growing, and if we're not becoming the individuals we need to be, then when Thomas was using the word service, who are we serving? We're not serving the clients, we're not serving ourselves, we're not growing, and we're not good for anyone. We're just stagnant. And so I admire both of you for taking the bull by the horn in your career and in your life, especially being young individuals. And I wanted others that is going to hear this live, they may not be on here now, or that's going to hear this conversation later and say, wow, look at both of what these individuals have done. They have taken their life and they have, they're responsible for themselves. Because lots of times we sit back and we expect someone else to be responsible for it. We expect, someone else to pave the way for us. You went to school, it's not easy. But and another thing, Susan, that you mentioned was those network connections. So she provided you with those connections. I remember as a manager, I used to say to individuals, you need to connect, but they would never do it. So someone can provide you with the tools and the resources, but if you don't do anything with the tool that's in your hand, that's, that doesn't help, right? Like Thomas, you went into the store and you saw we're hiring sign, but if you don't apply, if you would have never applied, the guy wouldn't have never been able to even call you back for the warehouse position. So we must apply ourselves in every way possible. We must afford ourselves a way to either get in the door or just be able to use the tools. So I'm glad you both talked about that. Now, I'm sure you both hit some roadblocks that weren't always easy. Can both of you just share one roadblock that you felt was the major roadblock you had to overcome? Whether it was personal, like mental, or like, I know sometimes I have to overcome my own mental roadblock, telling myself I can't sometimes. So that's why I'm a huge advocate of telling people, say yes to yourself. So share just one roadblock each one of you think you had was your major roadblock you had to overcome to be successful in life.
I think for me, just really stepping outside of my comfort zone, because that's where you grow, right? And I can provide a lot of examples even back like to high school. And so I grew up in a very like Hispanic community, very just I grew up in Oak Cliff, so very Hispanic, very much south side of the Trinity River. That's where I grew up. In high school, I went to a school that was all girls, majority Caucasian, and the expectations were a lot higher academically. And so it put me in a place where I was having to push myself to be comfortable being exposed to people and places outside of where I grew up. And even when I went to college, again, a new environment, new people, new experiences, new everything. Being comfortable and just getting out of my comfort zone and not staying like where I'm comfortable. Because if I stayed where I was comfortable, I probably wouldn't have been where I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now. And even last year, just making those tough decisions to continue to switch jobs. Like that wasn't easy. There's a lot of like, what if others will think of me? Like she can't keep a job. She's just like hopping from places to places. Um, it's really just trusting like yourself and the decisions that you make, I think has been probably my biggest roadblock.
That's good. Thomas.
Honestly, a lot of the same. Of course, I can name different roadblocks due to different people or different circumstances, but I think the most reoccurring roadblock in my career has just been getting over myself, defeating myself, as bad as that sounds, just looking at a situation and thinking, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, or even when it comes to putting in for a position, thinking, oh, well, I know this person's more qualified, or this person knows this. That's probably my biggest issue and the biggest thing that even now, to be completely honest with you, I still struggle with on a daily basis, just trying to get out of my own head, motivate myself. That way I can continue to motivate others.
That's really good. That's really good because I think the majority of individuals, we talk ourselves out of so much more than we're capable of doing because we don't see it. And most of the time, have you ever had somebody walk up to you and they'll say something about you and you're like, really? And we don't see what other people see. I just had that happen to me Sunday, went to church, and somebody came up to me and said something so sweet to me. And I'm thinking, oh, thank you. And what I have learned to do over the past probably 5, 10 years is to say thank you instead of question it because it was hard. I never used to be able to receive the compliments or the what others see because I struggled. I struggled to see what others see or struggled to receive it. But I've been learning to say thank you because evidently they see what I don't see. And so I need to learn how to accept that. But we're in our head all the time. We're talking to ourselves and we talk ourselves out of our own greatness. And evidently I see greatness in you too because I chose you to come on and talk with me about these topics. One of the things that really strikes me a lot is as a older woman who always wants to try to set an example. I'm not always the best example, but I try to set a good example. This is probably, I don't know if this is a hard or easy question for you to answer. Have you had older people in your life that you wish were a better example? Because what I'm gonna do next week, I have a older gentleman who is, he's a community person, and we want to come back and say, hey, these two young people are here, they're career minded, relate, and I want you to hit either whether relationship or even career. You say, I wish those that have gone before me would have done this better, and maybe there have been some other things I could maybe, because sometimes we make mistakes and we don't see that we're a hindrance to those who are coming behind us. I hope I'm making that a little bit clear because sometimes we're supposed to be an example that you guys can follow. So I made this statement to somebody one time. I said, why is it that young people won't follow? Why do they have to experience it for themselves? Right? Because we want you to say, you don't have to experience everything. But sometimes the things that we do are not good example for you to follow anyway. And so I put here, have you had many positive mentors or examples in relationship, career, and life? Have you, and you guys can shake your head now, have you had many good positive examples, or have you had some ones you're like, oh, I don't want to follow that, or a little bit of
I'd say
both?
a good mix of both.
Yeah, both.
Good mix of both. Okay.
Mhm.
So would you say there are some things that you would like to shout out to my generation? I would love for you both to give a shout out to my generation, positive and negative. And if you have to be a little harsh, be a little harsh. Like I wish you would, I wish you wouldn't. I wish you would, and I wish you wouldn't.
I wish you guys would advocate for yourselves more,
Wow.
especially in the workforce.
That is awesome, Susan.
That's,
Wow.
I think, something that's becoming more prominent in our generation. We're advocating for ourselves a little bit more. If there's some things we're not comfortable with, if there's something we want to do, if there's something that we want to um, accomplish, I think we are learning to just put ourselves first more and make decisions that long term benefit ourselves more than they benefit the place that we work for. Um, I want my identity to be more than what I just do for work. And so I think that's what um, maybe missing a little bit in the older generation is more education for yourself.
So that I'm gonna come to you, Thomas, with that. But so that um so would you say from that comment you just made, would you say that some of us are looking at your generation as not, are we viewing your generation when you advocate for yourself in a negative light instead of seeing it properly the way you're advocating for yourself? We're looking at it in a wrong light, in a light that maybe we shouldn't.
I wouldn't necessarily frame it as wrong. I think we each just are coming from our experiences, right? Our own perspectives, the time periods that we grew up in, and so I think allowing space from both sides for both perspectives to be present instead of trying to um, force one
Mm,
perspective on the other, as you were saying earlier, right? We can give people tools, we can give people resources, but then it's up to them to what they want to take from that point forward. um, and so it's a lot of what I like when I'm talking to my patients. You're responsible for yourself, you're not responsible for other people. You're responsible for your thoughts, feelings, behaviors. Everybody else is responsible for their own. There is space for both, but
mhm.
there's only responsibility for one side, which is your own.
Oh,
And so
that's good.
I think um, that's where my comment of advocate for yourselves more. If you don't do it for yourself, other people aren't going to do it because they're going to be advocating for themselves, and that's where their responsibility lies to be accountable for yourself by advocating for yourself.
Oh, that's real good, Thomas. We're gonna come
I don't
back to
even
you
know.
for some more.
So yeah, I don't even know how to follow that up.
Well, it could be relationally. It doesn't have to be about the workplace. It could be in relationship. I mean, what have named something you either good or bad that you would like to say to the older generation? I mean, what have you looked at? What have you seen? I don't want to lead
Okay. Well, on the work side of things, I'm gonna hit it from both points of view. So on the work side of things, I would I hate to just go ahead and say I agree with what she said again, but I do think that the previous generation could do a better job of advocating, and not necessarily just advocating, but even in some degree standing up for themselves. Just being a young person who works in a workplace with a lot of young people, we have less of the older generation, and it seems like those who are there just kind of put up with what everybody else does. They're just like, oh well, everybody else is young, so I'm just going to sit off by my own. Well, I'll talk to them when necessary, but they don't really come along with the rest of the group. I understand that the age difference leads to, a difference in topics and to talk about, and difference in personality and things of that sort. But sometimes it can be difficult and even a bit awkward, when you have, individuals of much different age groups working together, who, truth be told, if they weren't working together, they would never interact with each other just because they're that different. Um, like I said, it can be a little awkward. But I feel like a lot of times the older ones just kind of let whatever happen because they don't want to say anything. They don't want to, for lack of a better term, check the younger people. Um, so that's what I would say about that. On the relationship or more personal side, not to go into too much detail, but you're my aunt. You
Oh, you
know,
let the cat out the bag. I wasn't going to say it, but go ahead.
you know our family. Here's the best way I can put it. I would say I haven't felt that I've always had the best role models or people to show me what steps to take in life when it comes to the more familiar side. Now, when it comes to people like yourself or my mother, my mother's an angel. She's done literally everything she could and then some to get me to the point that I'm at. And even when people in my everyday walk of life ask me why I'm so mature for my age or how I'm able to operate the way I do, I always attribute it to my mother. Um, Outside of a select few people, though, I feel like there are a lot of other people in my life who could have been very impactful and were very impactful at a young age. That, like, as I've grown and matured, I look at them now and I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
why is that what you're doing? Why is that the example that you set for me? Um, but then you expect me to, go on to big and better things. It's like, but where does it come
That's
from?
exactly what I want you to
Where
hit
do
on.
I where do I get that? Where do I see that work ethic so I know how to develop that work ethic myself?
Mhm.
What is it that you could have done, while I was still young and impressionable, to kind of help further push me towards that goal that you say you want me to achieve? Kind of goes along with why I hate the saying, do as I say, not as I do. It's like, why should I though? Like, yes, obviously do as I say. If you're telling me to go become something great, I should do that. Yes, and that's what I want to do. But there's no better way to convince me that I should do it than show me exactly how to do it. Give me the steps and show that you did it yourself. So you know that those steps will lead me towards that greatness that you're asking me to achieve. If that makes
That's
sense.
really, really good. Oh, it's really good. That whole do as I say, not as I do is rubbish. Because if we want
Definitely.
someone to people do more of what we do, not what we say. And we should be leading. That's the whole premise of this conversation. What kind of examples are we setting? And I understand, I wasn't going to let the cat out the bag that you're my nephew, and that's why I'm so proud of you. That's not the only reason I'm proud of you anyway, because Susan's not my niece, um, but I'm proud of you anyway. But I agree that we can't just say to people, do this or show them one thing or start. And another thing, you alluded to the fact that we start these relationships with individuals and then we fall off. We're nowhere to be found. And so that can be also damaging, um, in essence, in itself, especially for, if just any relationship. If you're investing all this time, then all of a sudden you disappear out of someone's life and you're supposed to be there helping them and supporting them and guiding them or mentoring them. And then all of a sudden you disappear. Where's the support for that person that you supposedly had? Both of you talked about um, generation advocating for themselves, stand up for themselves in the workplace. But there was a comment that you made, Thomas, and both of you probably can touch on this, but you talked about the older people or my generation need to stand up for themselves. But I heard something about not being there and not communicating with the younger people. And you said maybe because they're a little standoffish, maybe because they don't want to check for better terms of language, or just, I would say, integrate, get involved, and be there. And you might see this sometimes, Susan, at your workplace, that there's a segregation of in community type. The older people sit here, or this population here, this, or these groups. And one of the things we need to find ourselves is, why are we separated instead of coming together and having those crucial conversations maybe that need to take place? Older women being with the younger women and having maybe some necessary conversations. Sometimes we'll find women, and sometimes it's not just older women, it's different cultures or different people. Thomas, older men looking at a younger guy and talking about his pants sagging instead of having a conversation with him. Young man, do you know there's a better way? And you're going to go into the workplace, and one day you're going to want people to see you as a professional. So why not begin carrying yourself? And so instead of having conversations with individuals, we have conversations about individuals. And that's bad. When we can do a better job at having conversations with individuals. And it doesn't, but the first thing I think, why we don't have conversations with individuals, we keep a distance. We back away from them instead of coming close and learning to know people. You have to get to know people before you can have conversations with them. So I don't know if you guys feel like that's been what you see happening. And it's almost sound like that's what you say happening in the workplace, Thomas, that they don't, if they're not required to, they don't, get together. And I think it happened before COVID, but it got worse after COVID. People do not communicate. They don't come together, and they're not forcing themselves to come together. And you can give me your feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now being in the position that I'm in, truth be told, it's weird. So I'm the youngest person at my store.
Wow.
But I'm the general manager. And so I have to be the bridge between the young people who, truth be told, I gravitate towards more on a personal side, and, the older people who are still my staff. Now, one thing I'm very clear about, and I say this to everyone, no one is above the team, especially not me. We have this saying around my store: we don't just call ourselves the Cedar Hill team. Anybody who refers to us, it is the Cedar Hill. Got to put emphasis on it. But we're a very team-oriented store. And so having to be that bridge between those two generations, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes, just because, truth be told, I don't relate to the older generation all that much. Outside of family members and some mentors that I've had from previous experiences, majority of the people I associate with are around the same age group as me. And so just finding something as simple as just a topic to talk about when we're slow, or things that we have in common, things that we like to do, things of that sort. While it's something so small and so negligible, it really does help to kind of pull everybody together. But like I said, I'm not gonna lie, it can be hard sometimes. At the current amount of staff that I have at the store right now, we really only have one person in our team whose age range is dramatically different from everybody else's. But it's prevalent. You can definitely tell that it's there. I don't allow the team to have, like, pods or posses or anything of that sort, because at the end of the day, our focus is taking care of our guests. But when there are the slow times, I do see moments where the younger people are kind of huddling together, talking about whatever, and then the older person will be off to the side, just reading a book, or, doing whatever they are. And it is hard trying to just kind of rope everybody back together and, like, hey, let's communicate together. But yeah, it's part of the job. It's part of the challenge.
But it's a challenge not just at work, it's a challenge in community. So I think that's where the breakdown starts, in community. And you said it too, in family, in community. And so we see all this chaos in community. It's because that's where the breakdown started. And breakdown started in family. I'm glad I consider myself one of your favorite aunties. So um, whether you believe that or not, I believe I am. So gotta say it. We're on camera. Um,
I was say, I feel like if I say yes, that's slighting everyone else. So I'm just gonna say I plead the
no one
fifth.
else is watching this, Thomas, so you can say it.
Isn't it recorded?
That's fine. Anyway,
And then I
maybe it's
think
about
from like a behavioral health perspective, my mind immediately goes back to just survival instincts, right? If we stick to what we know, that's where we know that we're safe. If we try to ride the wave of distress, we don't know what's going to happen if we go hang out with somebody who's 20 years older than us, or talk, spark up a conversation with somebody who's 20 years younger than us. And so I think, just again, going back to being pushed out of our comfort zone, especially I think now we're a society of like instant gratification, with where we can get whatever we want with in seconds, right? If I want something delivered within the next couple of hours, Amazon Prime can do that. If I want to reach out to somebody, it's they're right there. And so I think because we're not comfortable with riding the waves of distress or like uncertainty anymore, that's made it harder for us to be present like in those uncomfortable situations. And it's easier, right? It's easier to be around people who are similar to you. It's easier. In my clinic, we have an interdisciplinary team. So we have a pharmacy team, we have administration, we have the medical providers, and then I'm the only social worker in the clinic. I have a social work team who's spread out through the DFW Metroplex across all of our clinics, but I'm the only social worker who's present in the day to day aspect of my clinic. And so, and this is actually something I've talked to my own boss about. She's like, you know, you can really make a change in this clinic by helping bring people together, because you're the only one in there. You have to step out of your comfort zone to go talk to the MAs or to the administration up front or even to the medical providers, because we do tend to stay in our own little groups, whether it's because we're in different parts of the clinic or just because of our job roles. The MAs probably have more in common with what they do in their day to day work than what I do. But if we don't take like that initiative, like you're saying, we have to be active about things and not let things wait for them or wait for them to come to us. And I think that's where we're kind of at right now. We want to wait for things to come to us because that's what feels safe. That's where we like have that control that we've made in our minds like to be true.
so one of the things you just made me think about something that I do, and I don't know if you guys have ever done this. If you go to a social event, so if I go to a social event where there are people that I know, and if there's a meal served or something, what I try to do is always sit with someone I don't know instead of sitting, at a table. If they have these banquet tables or table rounds, I always try to take and go sit somewhere where there's at least one or two people that I have never sat with before. That's one of my get out of my comfort zone ways of integrating and doing something new, doing something different. Because if you stay at the same place doing the same thing that you've always done, you never grow. And so, how do we grow out of these places? How do we, as older population, learn how to integrate with the youth of today? I had a conversation with someone early this morning, and we were talking about how do we be good examples. Well, I can't use 19 or 2000, the year 2000 print up methods. Not saying that the same principles. Okay, principles still remain the same, but I can't use 2000 methods in 2023. And I don't know how you guys feel about that. I think sometimes we try to ram old methods It's like putting old wine, new wine in an old wineskin and it bursts. I think that we sometimes that may be part of the issue too. That you guys, I believe that you guys, I mean, I know Thomas is so technology like smart. Um, I remember I got a smartwatch for Christmas and I couldn't figure out simple. I'm like, look, dude, help me. Help me. I can't even figure out how to get the thing connected, turned on, do whatever. But you guys have such you guys learn quicker, you know how to do these things, and we need to embrace that and not see it as a negative. And I think sometimes we've like, oh, they're moving too fast, they're doing things too quick, they don't, and instead of embracing it and learning how to integrate with that.
I mean, I think your guys' feelings perspective on it is natural because what you grew up doing, learning, knowing, that's what got you to this point, right? That's what kept you safe. That's what kept you alive. And when there are new things that we don't know how they're going to work out for us because it's new, it's natural to have those, I think, hesitations about new things. And I think just recognizing that, it's natural to be scared of new things, but also being able to recognize that we need to adapt as well. Not judging yourself so hard for those reactions that you're having, because again, we're both generations growing up in different time periods, different perspectives, different cultures, communities. Everybody comes from their own point of view. And so I think just learning to not judge yourself so harshly. Give yourself more grace. That's something I've learned a lot from my current boss is just allow more grace, less judgment, and you'll be able to process things a little bit more better um, as they come forward.
Thomas, anything? Before I want to make sure you guys be able to say whatever you can before we get off. And any advice you have for young people and for the older population.
I wouldn't necessarily say I have any advice for young people, just because I try to still consider myself one of those. I have a little bit more time, you know. Um, but when it comes to the older generation, I would say take into account, even when you might not be doing something where you're trying to be a role model or trying to necessarily set an example for someone younger, uh, those actions and the things that we see you guys do, the moves we see you make, the things that you guys say still impact us, and we might still learn habits based on that. Now, again, I can't speak for anyone outside of myself, but I've been fortunate to have people like you, my mother, and some of the other mentors that I've had in life to help keep me grounded and make me the person that I am nowadays. But unfortunately, not everybody has been that fortunate. And a lot of times, people, when they're in environments where everything going around them is chaos and crazy making, they're still learning habits and still learning how to operate from that. Now, is that a good example? Should they be learning those things that they are? No, but unfortunately not in a lot. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that's still what they hold on to, and that's how they decide who they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's so true.
and I feel like even being in the position that I'm in and in the age that I'm in, um, I still look at what I do like, hey, or we'll phrase it this way. We have a saying in my company, and this is specifically from my current regional manager, who I'd say has been a huge impact on my life in the just last year and a half to 2 years that I've been working with him. And that saying is, you're always on a stage.
Mm-hmm.
Being in a position of management, even when you feel like you're not being watched, even when you feel like you can, get away with doing something that you either shouldn't be doing or just isn't for the better, you're always being watched. Your employees, your other associates, the guest, whomever. And so outside of work, and just talking into a more personal frame of life, even if you feel like the things that you're doing, the um, actions that you are performing aren't being watched and aren't building habits for those around you, they still are. Again, I've just been fortunate to see good habits from people, and that's been a positive for me. But that's pretty much it. I would say just take into account you're always on the stage. We're always watching you. Even now, like when my mother does something and it's really cool, or I'll have a conversation with her about how her day at work was, and she'll say something along the lines of what she said to a certain associate to get them to perform a certain way, or how she had to say something to someone at a store. You know, no matter what it may be. Even now, I'm like, oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna hold on to that. Or I'll see her do something, and it's like, I don't know about that one. You know, it's even not to slight my mother by any means. I love you, but just being honest, I'm still watching. She
Mhm.
still influences me even now, and that's with anybody. Um, Even with the people that I work with, those who are older than me, being that they're older than me, I know they have more experiences than me. Even if it's not in this particular field of work, they have more life experience. And so when they talk about things that they've gone through, or talk about tribulations that they've dealt with, situations that they found themselves in, and how they've worked out of them or worked their way out of them in the past, I like to hang on to those little nuggets of information they give me, because if I find myself in the same or similar situation sometime later down the line, I know how I should and should not operate to get my way out of it. That's it. I'm gonna stop talking now.
That's fine. That's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, before we close, Susan, anything else before we close, or
I think just take care of yourself, learn what that looks like for you. In a lot of my older populations, the patterns that I tend to see is that they love taking care of others, but they tend
hmm,
to not focus on themselves. And so we have to take care of ourselves, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And so I think that is just, and also that's just part of advocating for yourself is taking care of yourself. Not just whenever you're feeling sick physically, but when you're not feeling so great mentally and emotionally too. I think um, one of the biggest challenges I've faced in my field is just the stigma that there is against mental health, and going to go see a therapist, taking medication for depression, for anxiety, for any other things, um, really ties into to taking care of yourself.
yeah. And I'm a huge proponent of self care in every way. It's you can't take care of anyone else if you're not taking care of yourself. And so I am so thankful to the both of you for all your comments, your feedback, um, and even my joke about being your favorite aunt. It doesn't matter. But I just appreciate you both. You guys are so awesome. Both of you are just amazing. I wish you both much, much success in the future. I'm definitely going to be playing this back. Mr. Brody has his homework because I want him to come back and say, "Hey, what do you think about these two awesome young individuals?" And you know, man, that being on the stage always, when I start thinking about that, that helps me check myself. And Susan, you're so right. We don't advocate for ourselves, and we just to throw this up before we end. I just taught a class last week on healthy boundaries. And one of the biggest issues in healthy boundaries is you have to be responsible for yourself. I put that in red. That was big, bold, and in red. Knowing that you are responsible for your life and your happiness and stop trying to force other people to be. That was the healthy side. The unhealthy side is you expect somebody else to be it and do it. And so again, you guys brought up so many awesome points tonight that I think anybody that goes back and watches replay, I think there were a few people that were on. No one put questions, but there were a few people on the live that kept clicking in and listening, and whoever they are. But I know people last week, a lot of people went back and watched the live afterwards. And so if there are any comments, if there are any questions for you guys, I definitely will forward them to you. But I so appreciate you guys taking the time to come out and be my one of my first, well, second guests on the Tuesday Talk Live. And if you ever feel free that you can come back on and join with me, I would love to have you again. Thank you so much. Love you both dearly and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
Honor. Thank you.
I'll see you both soon. Maybe I can take you to lunch for as a thank you.
All right.
I know you both like to eat.
Yeah.
Have a good night, both of
Thank
you.
you. You too.
You
Bye.
as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Susan.